We live in a world that constantly demands more from us. More time, more energy, more focus. But that constant push can easily lead to burnout, leaving you mentally drained and struggling just to get through the day. The good news is that burnout isn't inevitable. And in this video, I'm going to share 7 tiny but powerful habits that can help protect your mind, recharge your energy, and save you from spiraling into exhaustion. The first habit is what researchers call true disconnection. And it's not what most people think. Stanford neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman's research reveals that your nervous system needs what is called parasympathetic activation to heal from chronic stress. But here's the problem. Most people think that they're resting when they're actually just switching channels. You close the laptop, but you're still running the meeting in your head. You leave the office, but you bring the stress to the dinner table. Your body is physically away from work, but your nervous system is still engaged. True disconnection means creating genuine psychological separation. This requires 2 things: time and boundaries. And here's how you can do it. First, choose a minimum of 7 consecutive days where you don't check work email, Slack, or take any work calls at all. Research shows it takes about a week for your cortisol levels to actually start dropping. Second, create what psychologists call transition rituals. Specific actions that signal to your brain that work mode is over. This might be changing clothes or taking a walk or doing 5 minutes of deep breathing. When I implemented this during my December burnout, I learned the hard way that there's a right and a wrong way to do it. The first time I tried taking time off, I didn't check work email, but I filled my time with personal projects and productivity. My nervous system was still activated as a result. I was just switching channels, as I said earlier. The next December, though, I did it right. Complete psychological separation. And it wasn't until day 7 or so that I felt something new. Not excitement or clarity, just the absence of tension. That's when I knew the reset was actually happening. But disconnection alone isn't enough. Your environment is constantly sending signals to your subconscious about who you're supposed to be. The second habit is environmental disruption. And this one might surprise you with how powerful it can be. Environmental psychologist Roger Barker discovered something fascinating. We have what he called behavior settings, specific environments that trigger automatic behavioral patterns within us. Your desk makes you want to be productive, for example. Your couch makes you want to zone out. These settings operate below conscious awareness. When you're burned out, your usual environments are loaded with all these stress triggers. The chair where you had that difficult meeting, the coffee shop where you always work, even your bedroom where you lay awake and worry about details and deadlines. Environmental disruption breaks these unconscious patterns and gives your nervous system permission to respond differently. Here's the practical approach. Spend at least 3 to 5 days in a completely different physical environment. This doesn't have to be exotic or anything. It just has to be unfamiliar to you. A different city or a friend's house, even a different neighborhood in your own town would work just fine. The key is that nothing in this new environment should remind your body of your usual routines or stressors. Different rhythms, different sights, different energy, different sensations. When I applied this principle personally, it meant traveling back to my hometown during the holidays in that December period. We stayed in different houses, obviously, spent time with family I hadn't seen in over a year, and it really wasn't glamorous, but it was disruptive. And that disruption allowed something in me to repattern. Not just mentally, but physically as well, and that was super important. How I moved, how I breathed, even how I held my shoulders up, Your body needs to remember that there are other ways to exist. But once you've created that space, you need something to fill it with purpose. The third habit is what researchers call morning alignment questions. And it's based on Dr. Joe Dispenza's research about intentional neuroplasticity. When you're burned out, you lose touch with your own inherent desires. You're so used to responding to external stimuli and demands that you forget how to tune into your own internal compass. Dr. Dispenza's study shows that asking specific questions during meditative states can literally rewire your brain's reward pathways. The question that can change everything, in my case, it's simple. What would my ideal day look like? Not 10 years from now, not someday when you've made it, but today. Right now, in fact. And here's how you can practice this. Every morning before you check your phone or otherwise start your day, sit quietly for 5 or 10 minutes and ask this simple question. Don't think about it logically, feel into the answer. What would bring you genuine satisfaction today? The key is specificity and embodiment. Instead of, I want to be happy, try, I want more space to think creatively, or I want to feel more presence with my family. And as you envision it, notice how it feels in your body. When I first started practicing this during my own recovery, I was shocked by how simple my own answers were. More space, more creativity, more presence. Less urgency, less performative pressure. That question became my North Star when everything else felt uncertain. But knowing what you want is only half the battle. You need to create space between yourself and the emotions that try to pull you off course. The fourth habit comes straight from neuroscientist Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research on affect labeling. And it's one of the most powerful tools for emotional regulation that you can learn. When you're burned out, you're constantly hijacked by these emotions that you're feeling. Frustration, overwhelm, anxiety. These emotions feel like facts about reality, but they're actually just neurochemical events within your body. The observer practice creates what researchers call cognitive distance, space between you and your emotional reactions. The technique is elegantly simple. When you notice yourself caught in a strong emotion, ask this question. Who is feeling this emotion? This question activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that is responsible for executive functions, while simultaneously calming your amygdala, which processes threats and stressors. Here's the step-by-step process. First, notice when you're emotionally activated. This might be frustration, anxiety, or overwhelm, any feeling that seems to take you over negatively. Second, pause and ask that question. Who is feeling this emotion? And thirdly, wait for the answer. Usually you'll realize that there's a part of you experiencing that emotion and a part of you observing it. The observer is always calm. I discovered this technique during a walk with my dog Bubba when I was completely frustrated about something at work I can't even really remember now. The question just surfaced from a book I had been reading, the night before. And the second that I asked it, I wasn't inside the frustration anymore. I was watching it. And in that space, the emotions softened and the noise quieted. This became my go-to practice whenever I felt hijacked by stress and negativity. It's tiny and it's simple, but it is incredibly powerful because it meets you exactly where you are, whenever you are. And speaking of meeting yourself where you are, the next habit is about creating space for whatever wants to emerge. The fifth habit is morning brain dump. And it's backed by decades of research on expressive writing from Dr. James Pennebaker. When you're burned out, your mind is constantly churning, replaying conversations, rehearsing future scenarios, cycling through all of the worries that you could possibly have, right? This mental noise prevents your brain from accessing what researchers call default mode network, the state where creativity and insight naturally arise. Dr. Pennebaker's studies show that Writing continuously for 15 to 20 minutes about your thoughts and emotions literally changes your brain chemistry. It reduces cortisol, improves immune function, and creates what he calls cognitive closure. Your mind stops cycling through unfinished mental loops. And here's the simple protocol. Every morning before you do anything else, write continuously for 10 to 15 minutes. No editing, no structure, no judgment. Just dump whatever's in your head onto paper. This isn't journaling in the traditional sense. You're not trying to be insightful or profound. You're not going to read it later. You're just clearing mental clutter so you can access the clarity that's always been underneath throughout your day. I've dabbled with the morning brain dump throughout adulthood and have recently started re-implementing it myself after waking up one morning at 5:06 a.m., I still remember it, with my mind racing about a memory about my grandpa. I realized I hadn't been properly winding down of late, because I'd been skipping both this practice and my evening meditations. The impact was immediate. My mind felt cleared out and spacious instead of cluttered and reactive. But clearing mental noise is just the beginning. You also need to feed your mind with the right inputs. Habit 6 is what researchers call daily wisdom consumption. And it's based on studies about neuroplasticity and cognitive restructuring. When you're burned out, your thinking patterns get stuck in these loops, as we've said. You see problems everywhere, but solutions nowhere. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset shows that consuming new perspectives literally creates new neural pathways. But only if you do it consistently. The key is choosing inputs that expand your sense of what's possible rather than inputs that keep you trapped in problem-focused thinking. And here's the systematic approach you can use. Dedicate 20 to 30 minutes daily of reading, listening, or watching content that challenges your current worldview. This might be spiritual texts, psychology research, philosophy, or memoirs from people who've overcome similar challenges. The crucial element is consistency over intensity. Better to read 10 pages daily than to binge an entire book once a month. When I implemented this during my recovery, it meant reading 11 books in January. Spiritual texts, mindset books, ancient wisdom. I wasn't trying to implement everything I read, I was just exposing my mind to new ways of thinking about old problems. This daily input started shifting my perspective from I'm stuck over to maybe there are options I haven't considered yet. But new perspectives are just potential energy. To create real transformation, you need to embody entirely new states of being. The 7th and final habit is embodied visualization, backed once again by Dr. Joe Dispenza's research on meditation and neuroplasticity. Most people think visualization is about imagining future outcomes, but Dr. Dispenza's studies show that the real power comes from embodying the emotional states that you want to experience in the present moment. When you consistently feel the emotions of your desired reality, your brain literally rewires itself to seek out experiences that match up with those feelings that you're having. This isn't wishful thinking, it's applied neuroscience. And here's the specific protocol. Spend 10 to 15 minutes daily in a meditative state, visualizing your ideal life circumstances. But focus less on the external details and more on how you want to feel. As you visualize, pay attention to the physical sensations in your body. Notice any warmth or tingling or expansion of any sort. These are signs that you're actually changing your neurochemistry in real time. During my own practice with this technique, 2 things arose consistently for me. A red Ford F-150 EV and YouTube as my life's work. But more importantly, I felt waves of joy and satisfaction and gratitude as a result of these visualizations. Sometimes I'd literally be moved to tears by the intensity of the positive emotions that I was experiencing. The breakthrough came when I realized I could access these same feelings outside of meditation even. During those walks with my dog, I'd intentionally use the observer practice from habit 4, right? And then I'd intentionally shift into these elevated emotional states that I'd been experiencing in those meditations. I was training my nervous system to spend more time in joy and less time in stress, actually. Within weeks, I started making decisions from this elevated state rather than from the burnout and overwhelmed states. And the external changes followed naturally. Here's what you need to understand. Burnout isn't a character flaw or a sign that you need to work harder. It's your nervous system's way of saying, this current approach you have isn't sustainable. These 7 habits work because they address burnout at the neurological level, not just at the behavioral level. You're not just changing what you do, you're changing how your brain responds to stress, processes emotion, and generates motivation. The progression is intentional. First, you create space through disconnection and environment change. Then you develop awareness through alignment questions and the observer practice. Then you clear the noise through the brain dump and wisdom consumption. And finally, you embody new possibilities through visualization. So here's your action step. Don't try to implement all 7 habits at once. Start with habit 1, true disconnection. Schedule 2 weeks off where you completely separate from your work. No exceptions. During those 14 days, add 1 new habit every few days. And by the end of your break, you'll have a complete practice that supports long-term resilience instead of just short-term relief. And here's what I'm curious about. Which of these 7 habits feels the most challenging to you right now? Drop a comment below and let me know. I read every single one, and your answer might help someone else who's in the same place that you are. And if this framework resonates with you, and you want more research-backed approaches to conscious living, then hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more where this came from. And remember, you don't have to stay stuck in burnout. Your nervous system is designed to heal. You just need to give it the right conditions. But here's what most people don't realize about this healing process. There's a specific moment when everything shifts. When you go from managing burnout to actually transcending it entirely. I made a whole video about how to find that unshakable center. And it might be exactly what you need to hear next. And it's right over here when you're ready. Thanks for watching.